The rivers dry up first. Then the animals leave, following a memory of water none of them can name. The plants die last, but they die. A drought does not kill you quickly. It kills you slowly, over months, while you watch it happen. For ancient humans, it wasn't a bad season. It could be 5 years, 10 years, even a lifetime. And somehow, some of them lived through it. Picture the land the way it used to be, green, loud with life, full of grazing herds. Then the rain stopped coming. Not for a week, for years. The riverbed cracks into a mosaic of dry mud. The water holes shrink to a ring of sticky clay. Grass turns from green to gold to gray, then to dust. The herds that once blackened the plains start to move toward wherever the water still is. Birds go quiet. Insects go quiet. The whole landscape empties out, animal by animal. The humans who lived there had nowhere else built yet. No irrigation, no wells dug deep enough, no stored grain. Just their own bodies and whatever they knew about the land. An adult human can survive roughly 3 days without water in extreme heat. 3 days. Children and the elderly die faster than that. Drought doesn't ask who deserves to survive. It simply removes water from the equation and waits. Early humans had no myths yet that explained why the sky stopped giving rain. They only had the evidence in front of them, dying land and disappearing prey. So the question was never, why is this happening? It was, what do we do now? Rewind nearly 2 million years to the East African Rift Valley. This was one of the cradles of the earliest members of our family tree, and its lakes had a terrifying habit. Geologists can see it in the layered rock, mud, then dust, then mud again. Early hominins built their entire lives around water that could disappear within a single generation. Some populations didn't adapt fast enough. Their fossil record simply stops. Others changed everything about how they lived. Researchers call this idea variability selection. Evolution favoring flexibility over specialization. Species that survived weren't the strongest ones. They were the ones who could eat differently, move differently, think differently whenever the old way stopped working. For nearly 2 million years, that test never really stopped. Roughly 74,000 years ago, a volcano in what is now Indonesia detonated with a force almost impossible to picture. Toba, roughly 74,000 years ago. Ash fell across Africa and Asia, thousands of miles from the eruption. Some scientists believe it triggered years of cooling and failed rains. A volcanic winter layered on top of existing drought. This theory is debated, but the timing lines up with something dramatic in our genes. Human genetic diversity today is oddly low for how old our species is. One explanation, our population may have crashed to just a few thousand breeding individuals. A few thousand for the entire human species. If that number is right, every person alive today may descend from survivors of that bottleneck. We very nearly did not make it. So the real question becomes, where did the survivors actually survive? One answer sits on the southern tip of Africa, in caves overlooking the sea. A site called Pinnacle Point has become one of the most important places in the story of our species. Around 164,000 years ago, and again during later droughts, this coastline may have been a lifeline. While the interior of the continent turned to dust, the ocean kept giving. Tides went out and left something the drought couldn't touch. Shellfish, mussels, whelks, brown mussels, clinging to the rocks at low tide. No rain required, no prey to hunt down, just timing the tides correctly, twice a day. Middens, ancient trash heaps of shells, are stacked meters deep at these sites. That's not an accident. That's generations of people returning to the same shoreline, drought after drought. They used red ochre here too, for symbolism, maybe even the first signs of shared belief. Coastline can't stop a drought, but it can outlast one. Inland, survival meant becoming an expert reader of a dying landscape. Every cracked print in dry mud told a story. Which animal, how long ago, how thirsty it was. Elephants remember water sources across enormous distances, sometimes decades old. So ancient hunters didn't need to know where the water was. They just needed to follow something that did. Tracking an elephant herd during a drought wasn't just about food anymore. It was about survival intelligence. Plants told their own story too. Certain roots and tubers store water deep underground, safe from the sun. Digging for them could take hours, with nothing but a sharpened stick and patience. Some of these tubers hold more liquid than food value. A canteen you had to dig out of the earth. Knowing exactly which plant, in exactly which soil, was knowledge passed down, not invented on the spot. Guess wrong, and you dig for nothing, in heat that was already killing you. One method. Dig into a dry riverbed until damp sand appears, then keep going. A sip well. A hole in the sand, deep enough to let groundwater slowly seep in. A hollow reed, pushed into the sand, let you suck water up without disturbing the fragile hole. It could take an hour to get a mouthful, but an hour of patience beat dying of thirst. Ostrich eggshells became something else entirely. Portable water tanks. Emptied, cleaned, refilled, and sealed with grass or resin. They held water for weeks. One ostrich egg could hold nearly a liter of water. Whole caches of these were buried along travel routes, marked by memory alone, for use months later. Losing track of a buried cache didn't just mean inconvenience. It could mean not making it to the next water source alive. Every one of these systems required something modern life rarely demands: total, accurate memory of the land. But no single person could outsurvive a multi-year drought alone. Survival depended on other people, sometimes people you'd never met. Many hunter-gatherer societies built long-distance kinship and gift networks precisely for this reason. When our water is gone, an elder might have said, "We go to my sister's people, 3 valleys east." These exchange relationships, gifts, marriages, favors, created a map of obligations stretching across hundreds of miles. When your land failed, that map became your lifeline. You could walk for days to a distant group and be fed, not fought, not out of charity, out of a system built for exactly this moment. Refusing a starving relative violated one of the oldest rules humans ever wrote for themselves, long before any of it was written down. Drought didn't just test bodies. It tested the strength of relationships built years, even generations, earlier. None of this made drought survivable for everyone. Skeletons from drought-era sites show the signs plainly. Lines in tooth, enamel, and bone, called stress markers, record childhoods interrupted by starvation. Infant mortality spiked, and so did death in early childhood, the most vulnerable window of a human life. Isotope analysis of ancient bones shows diets narrowing drastically, down to whatever survived, not whatever was wanted. Cannibalism has even been documented at a small number of extreme prehistoric sites in periods of total ecological collapse. These were not common, but they happened when every other option was gone. Drought is one of the only forces in prehistory that can be traced directly into the bones of the people who lived through it. The Sahara itself carries maybe the greatest before and after story in this whole history. For thousands of years, during what's called the African humid period, the Sahara was green, lakes, rivers, grazing herds. Rock art still preserved on Saharan cliffs shows cattle, swimmers, hunters, in a landscape that no longer exists. Around 5,000 years ago, the rains that fed it weakened, then failed almost entirely. Within a few centuries, one of the greenest regions on Earth became one of the driest deserts on Earth. The people living there didn't have the luxury of waiting it out. They packed what they had and walked toward whatever water hadn't disappeared yet. Entire populations reorganized their lives around a shrinking map of rivers and highlands. It's one of the largest forced migrations in human prehistory, and almost nobody talks about it. Even earlier relatives of ours, like Neanderthal groups in Europe and Asia, faced their own versions of this same brutal pattern. Shifting climates squeezed their territory too, long before the last of them disappeared. Rock shelters like these became refuges not just from heat, but from the slow disappearance of everything outside them. Every night without rain was another night of uncertainty, shared silently around the same fire. Reading the stars, the moon, and the behavior of migratory birds gave early humans clues that rain might finally be coming. Change in bird migration, a shift in the wind, could mean everything. And when the first storm clouds finally did appear on the horizon, it was treated like a miracle, because it meant, for now, that they had made it. The land recovers faster than people expect, but recovery never erases what the drought cost. Every group that made it through carried the memory forward, so the next generation would know what to do. The sip wells were which plants held water, which paths led toward the highlands. None of it was written down. It didn't need to be. It was carried in stories, in habits, in the muscle memory of walking to the same water source your grandparents walked to. That knowledge was, in a very real sense, the most valuable tool ancient humans ever carried. Sharper senses, better memory, tighter bonds, more inventive hands. Drought demanded all of it at once, and it shaped who eventually walked away from these landscapes still breathing. Every one of these droughts should have been the end of us. Instead, they built something into us, the instinct to read land, to remember water, to depend on each other. People who survived weren't lucky exactly. They were prepared by thousands of years of exactly this happening before. The next time it doesn't rain for a year where you live, remember something. Your ancestors did this for a living, and they were very, very good at it. This is how we survived the worst droughts our species ever faced. And it's still written quietly into every single one of us.